The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the glass windows of Ubuntu Atelier, the most exclusive fashion house in Sandton City. Naledi Khumalo stood at her cutting table, her skilled hands moving across a bolt of vibrant ochre fabric, transforming it into something extraordinary. The sound of kabza de small drifted through the speakers, mixing with the gentle hum of sewing machines in the background. She hummed along, lost in her work, when her assistant Thandai rushed in from the front. "Naledi, you need to see this," Thandai whispered urgently, her eyes wide with something between fear and fascination. Naledi looked up, wiping her hands on her apron. "What is it?" "There's a man. Korean. Outside. With bodyguards." Thandai's voice dropped even lower. "I think it's Choi Dae-jung." The name hung in the air like smoke. Everyone in Johannesburg's underground knew that name. The Ice King, they called him. The Korean crime lord who controlled everything from weapons trafficking to underground gambling. A man whose very presence could make seasoned criminals nervous. Naledi removed her apron and walked toward the front of the shop. Through the glass doors, she could see him. Tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal Italian suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. 2 bodyguards flanked him, scanning the street with professional paranoia. But it was the man himself who captured her attention. There was something in the way he stood, rigid and controlled, like a man holding himself together through sheer force of will. She pushed open the door. The bodyguards tensed, but the man raised a hand slightly, and they relaxed. "Sabobona, Budi," Naledi said warmly, greeting him in Zulu. "Welcome to Ubuntu. How can I help you today?" Choi Dae-jung looked at her, and for a moment, something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps. Or something else entirely. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I need..." he began, his accent thick but his English clear. "I need suits." Naledi smiled, gesturing for him to enter. "Well, you've come to the right place. We specialize in custom pieces that..." She noticed he wasn't moving. He stood frozen at the threshold, his breathing slightly elevated. Sweat had begun to form at his temples despite the cool air conditioning. "Sir? Are you all right?" The words seemed to break whatever spell held him. His eyes met hers, and she saw something there that shocked her. Not the coldness she'd expected from a crime lord. Not arrogance or cruelty. But raw, desperate confusion. "I will return," he said abruptly, turning away. "Wait, I haven't even..." But he was already walking away, his bodyguards scrambling to keep up. One of them nearly knocked over the decorative beadwork display by the entrance. Naledi watched them disappear into a black Mercedes, more confused than she'd been in a long time. "What was that about?" Thandai asked from behind her. Naledi shook her head slowly. "I have no idea. But something tells me we haven't seen the last of him." That night, in a penthouse overlooking the glittering Sandton skyline, Dae-jung poured his 3rd glass of whiskey with shaking hands. The amber liquid sloshed against the crystal as memories assaulted him. Seoul. 18 months ago. The car explosion that had torn his life apart. He could still smell the burning metal, feel the searing heat. The months of hospital recovery had been bad enough. But it was the doctor's final prognosis that had broken something inside him that no surgery could repair. The trauma was severe, Dae-jung SSI, Dr. Kim had said in Korean, his face grave. "The damage to your pelvic region, the nerve damage. I'm sorry, but you may never regain full function." As a man. The words had echoed in his mind for months. Never. Full function. As a man. He'd tried everything. The best doctors in Seoul, Tokyo, even Switzerland. Traditional medicine, experimental treatments, therapists who spoke in careful euphemisms about trauma and healing. Nothing worked. His body had become a prison, a constant reminder of what he'd lost. Women had been sent to him, beautiful models and escorts, all carefully vetted and paid for their discretion. Each encounter had ended the same way. Him, staring at the ceiling, feeling nothing. Their pitying glances. The whispered conversations he wasn't supposed to hear. "It's okay," they'd say. "It happens." But it didn't just happen. It was his constant reality. The great Choi Dae-jung, feared across 3 continents, reduced to this. A shell of a man playing pretend at power. He'd come to Johannesburg to expand his operations, to escape Seoul's prying eyes and whispered rumors. But mostly, he'd come to disappear into his work, to bury himself so deep in the empire he'd built that he wouldn't have to think about what he'd become. And then he'd walked into that shop. Dae-jung set down his glass and pulled out his phone, dialing a number in Seoul. His private physician answered on the second ring. "Dae-jung, it's late here. Is everything alright?" "No," Dae-jung said in Korean. "I need to ask you something. Is it possible, could the damage have been psychological? Could my mind be preventing?" "We've been through this," Dr. Kim said gently. The scans showed clear nerve damage. The physical trauma was catastrophic. But today, I felt something. The words came out rushed. Not phantom sensation. Real. My body responded. For the first time in 18 months. There was a long pause. What triggered it? Dae-jung closed his eyes, seeing Naledi's face again. That warm smile. The way she'd looked at him without fear, without recognition of who he was or what he represented. A woman. But I didn't touch her. She just spoke to me. Dae-jung, Dr. Kim's voice was heavy with concern. The mind is incredibly powerful, especially after trauma. What you experienced could be. Don't tell me it was nothing. Dae-jung's voice rose. I know my own body. I know what I felt. I'm not saying it was nothing. I'm saying you need to be careful. Hope can be as dangerous as despair, especially for someone in your position. Don't set yourself up for more pain. After the call ended, Dae-jung sat in the darkness of his penthouse, the city lights twinkling below like distant stars. His hand moved to the scars on his abdomen, tracing the lines that marked where surgeons had pieced him back together. Could it be real? Or was he so desperate for healing that his mind was creating fantasies? He made a decision then. He had to know. 3 days later, Dae-jung returned to Ubuntu Atelier. This time, he came alone. The decision had sent his security team into near panic, but he'd been firm. If this was real, if there was even a chance, he needed to face it without the armor of bodyguards and reputation. The bell chimed as he entered. Naledi looked up from a consultation with a client, and when their eyes met, that smile spread across her face again. Warm. Genuine. Utterly without fear. "Ah, you came back," she said, excusing herself from her client. "And without your entourage. Should I be worried?" Dae-jung forced himself to stay calm, to ignore the way his heart rate had increased the moment he heard her voice. "I need suits. Business suits." Naledi tilted her head, studying him with those intelligent eyes. "Eesh, now we both know that's not why you're here, my friend. You don't know anything about me. I know you didn't come back for suits. But okay, let's play this game." She gestured toward the back of the shop. "Come. Let's take measurements." The measuring process was torture. Every time her hands touched him, shoulder, chest, waist, his body responded. Not just desire, though that was there too. But proof. Undeniable proof that whatever had broken in him was waking up. Naledi pulled fabric samples, draping them across his shoulders, talking the whole time. "A man like you, hiding in all that black and gray, we can do better. See this?" She held up a bolt of deep navy fabric with subtle African-inspired patterns woven through. "This is power. But it's warm power. Living power." "I don't do color," Dae-jung said, his voice tight. "You don't do anything that makes you feel alive," she countered, pinning the fabric at his shoulder. "Why is that?" Their eyes met in the mirror. The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. How much do you know about me? He asked quietly. Enough to know you're not here for fashion advice. She stepped back, hands on her hips. But I also know that everyone who walks through my door is here for transformation. Some just don't know it yet. Dae-jung found himself buying 4 suits without trying any on, just to have a reason to return. As Naledi wrote up the order, she asked casually, "What are you running from?" He looked up sharply. "Who says I'm running? Or running toward?" She smiled. "Either way, you've got that look. Like a man standing at a crossroads, trying to decide which path leads to life and which to more death." The observation was so accurate it took his breath away. "You read people. It's my job. I dress bodies, but I see souls." She handed him the receipt. "Come back in a week for your first fitting. And next time, don't be afraid to tell me what you really want." Over the next 2 weeks, Dae-jung found excuses to return to Ubuntu Atelier 5 more times. Each visit stretched longer than necessary. Naledi seemed amused by his transparent attempts at prolonging their interactions, but she never called him out directly. His right-hand man, Yoon Sang-woo, was less subtle. "Hyungnim, we need to talk," Sang-woo said in Korean during a business meeting at the warehouse. Numbers for their latest shipment from Seoul sprawled across the table, but Dae-jung had barely glanced at them. "Talk then. You're distracted. The men have noticed. More importantly, our rivals have noticed." Dae-jung looked up sharply. "What rivals?" "The Johannesburg syndicate. They've been watching the atelier. They've seen you going there. Alone." Sang-woo leaned forward. "They think the Ice King has found warmth. That makes you vulnerable. I can handle them. Can you? Because right now, you're acting like a man who's forgotten what's at stake." Sang-woo's voice dropped. "I've known you since we were kids in Itaewon. I've never seen you like this. What's happening?" Dae-jung stood, walking to the warehouse window overlooking the Johannesburg skyline. "Something impossible." "What?" "I'm feeling again. After 18 months of nothing, I'm feeling everything." He turned back to Sang-woo. "Do you know what that's like? To be dead inside and suddenly wake up?" Sang-woo's expression softened. "Is it the woman? The designer?" "Naledi." Her name felt sacred in his mouth. "And I don't know how or why, but when I'm near her, I'm whole again." "Or you think you are?" "Hyungnim, this could be." "Don't." Dae-jung's voice turned cold. "Don't tell me it's not real. I know what's real." That night, Dae-jung showed up at Ubuntu Atelier at 9 p.m., standing in the rain outside the glass door. Naledi was working late, designing by lamplight, her natural hair piled high on her head. When she saw him, she didn't look surprised. She simply unlocked the door. "You're soaked," she said, grabbing a towel from the back. "I needed to see you." "At 9 o'clock at night? In the rain?" But she was smiling. "Come sit. I'll make rooibos." They sat in her workspace, surrounded by half-finished designs and bolts of fabric. The tea was hot and sweet, flavored with honey and cinnamon. For a long moment, neither spoke. So, Naledi finally said, "Are you going to tell me why Seoul's most dangerous man keeps buying suits he doesn't need?" Dae-jung set down his cup. "You know who I am." "Of course I know. I'm not naive. Google exists, and so does the Johannesburg rumor mill." She leaned back in her chair. "But I also know that fear is boring, and you're not boring. You should be afraid." "Why? Will you hurt me?" "Never." The word came out with such conviction it surprised even him. "Then we don't have a problem." Naledi's expression softened. "Now talk to me. What really brings you here?" And somehow, in the quiet safety of that workspace, Dae-jung found himself telling her things he'd never told anyone. Not about the criminal empire or the violence, but about the accident. The explosion that had torn his body apart. The surgeries. The specialists who delivered their verdict like a death sentence. They told me I'd never be whole again, he said quietly. That the damage was permanent. That part of me, the part that makes a man, was just gone. Naledi listened without interruption, without pity. When he finished, she asked simply, and then? Then I walked into your shop. The understanding that passed between them was electric. Dae-jung felt stripped bare in a way that had nothing to do with physical nakedness and everything to do with being truly seen. Your body is trying to tell you something, Naledi said softly. Maybe it's not as broken as you think. Maybe it was just waiting. For what? For someone to see you. Not your reputation. Not your empire. Just you. She reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of his. The real you. The one sitting here drinking rooibos and telling me his fears. Dae-jung looked at her hand, so close to his. If I touch you, everything changes. Maybe everything needs to change. His hand covered hers, and the sensation that shot through him was overwhelming. Proof. Undeniable proof. His body responding not to some impersonal stimulus, but to genuine connection. To her. Naledi, he breathed. I don't know how to do this. How to be normal. How to be with someone when I don't even know if I can. Stop, she said firmly. You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. She stood, pulling him to his feet. Come on. It's late. You should go. But at the door, he couldn't let go of her hand. They stood in the threshold, rain still falling outside, the city quiet around them. I'm falling for you, he said in Korean, then repeated in English. I don't know how to stop it. Naledi's smile was sad and beautiful. Then don't stop it. But know this, if you're going to be in my life, you need to be ready for all of it. Not just the sweet parts. The scary parts too. The parts where your enemies become my enemies. Where my world becomes your world. Can you do that? Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. Sang-woo. Urgent. I have to go, he said reluctantly. I know. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. Be safe, Dae-jung. It was the first time she'd said his name, and it sounded like music. He left, but the feeling of her hand in his stayed with him all the way back to his penthouse. What he didn't see was the car parked across the street. The men inside, watching. Taking photos. Sending them to their boss at the Johannesburg syndicate headquarters. The ambush came 3 nights later. Dae-jung had made a stupid decision, one born from a desire to be normal, to be just a man seeing a woman he cared about. He'd sent his bodyguards home early, wanting privacy for another late-night visit to Naledi's atelier. They'd talked for hours about everything and nothing. She'd shown him her designs, explaining the meaning behind each pattern, each color choice. He'd told her about growing up in Seoul's Itaewon district, about the streets that had shaped him before the criminal world claimed him. It was nearly 11 when he finally left. The rain had started again, turning Johannesburg streets slick and reflective. He was walking to his car, alone, when he heard the footsteps behind him. 4 men emerged from the shadows. He recognized the tattoos. Johannesburg Syndicate. The Ice King walks alone, the leader said in accented English. Not so smart. Dae-jung's body moved on instinct. Years of training took over. He dropped the first man with a strike to the throat, pivoted to block the second's knife thrust. But there were too many, and they were coordinated. The knife caught him in the side. Pain exploded through his ribs. A second blade slashed across his shoulder as he tried to dodge. Gunshot. A grazing wound, but it spun him around. He crashed against the wall, blood spreading across his shirt. The sound of approaching traffic scared them off. They disappeared into the night like smoke, leaving Dae-jung slumped against the brick wall, breathing hard, bleeding heavily. His phone rang. Sang-woo again. He didn't answer. Instead, with hands slick with blood, he scrolled to Naledi's number. No. He couldn't pull her into this. Couldn't make her a target. But his feet were already moving, stumbling back toward Ubuntu Atelier. Back toward the only person in this city who made him feel human. Who made him feel whole. Naledi was in her back office, finishing paperwork, when she heard the desperate pounding on the rear entrance. She grabbed the decorative Zulu walking stick her grandfather had given her, just in case, and approached cautiously. Who's there? Naledi, please. She yanked open the door and gasped. Dae-jung stood there, illuminated by the security light, blood soaking through his shirt and dripping onto the ground. His face was pale, sweat mixing with rain. Jesus Christ. She grabbed his arm, pulling him inside. I'm calling an ambulance. No. His hand caught her wrist with surprising strength. No hospitals. Please. They'll find me there. And they'll find you. You're bleeding everywhere. You need. I trust you. His eyes locked onto hers, desperate and vulnerable. Only you. Please. The weight of that trust nearly broke her. She led him to her office couch, ran to get the first aid kit she kept for workshop accidents. Her hand shook as she cut away his shirt, revealing the knife wound in his side and the gunshot graze across his shoulder. This needs stitches, she said, her voice cracking. Dae-jung, this is serious. I know. Do your best. She cleaned the wounds with hands that gradually steadied, years of precise needlework translating to careful medical care. He flinched but didn't cry out. She used butterfly bandages for the knife wound, knowing they wouldn't hold long but having no other option. The gunshot graze she cleaned and wrapped tightly. Tears streamed down her face the entire time. Why didn't you call your people? She asked, voice thick with emotion. Because they would have taken me away from you. You could have died. I did die. 18 months ago. He reached up with a bloody hand, cupping her face. You brought me back. Naledi finished bandaging him, then sat back on her heels. They looked at each other, the air heavy with everything unspoken. This is insane, she whispered. I know. You're a criminal. You have enemies who just tried to kill you. I know. And I'm falling in love with you. The words hung between them like a confession. Dae-jung's expression cracked, revealing raw emotion beneath the careful control. I know, he said softly. I fell first. She leaned forward, and their lips met. The kiss was desperate, tasting of salt and copper, rain and tears. Every broken part of him seemed to come alive. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer despite the pain in his side. She was careful of his wounds but fierce in her need to be close to him. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. You can't stay here, Naledi said practically, even as she held his face. They'll look for you. Come to my place. It's safer than your penthouse, they don't know about it yet. I'm putting you in danger just by being near you. Then we're both in danger together. She stood, helping him to his feet. Come on. Can you walk? For you? I'd crawl. They made it to her apartment in Rosebank, a modest but beautiful space filled with fabric samples and art. She helped him to her bed, brought water and painkillers. Then she lay down beside him, careful not to jostle his injuries. Tell me something, she said softly. Something true. Something that has nothing to do with blood or empires or broken bodies. Dae-jung thought for a long moment. When I was 10, my Iamoni, my mother, used to take me to Namsan Tower in Seoul. We'd watch the sunset over the city. She'd say, Dae-jung, no matter how dark it gets, the sun always comes back. She died 2 years later. Cancer. His voice grew thick. I haven't watched a sunset in over 20 years. Naledi laced her fingers through his. Then we'll watch one together. Tomorrow. From your penthouse. I want to see Seoul through your eyes, even if it's just the memory of it. He turned his head to look at her, this extraordinary woman who'd somehow seen past every defense he'd built. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" "Because I see what you can't see yet." She smiled. "You're not the Ice King anymore, Dae-jung. You're just a man trying to find his way back to himself. And I want to walk that path with you. If you'll let me. My world is dangerous. So is crossing the street in Joburg." She touched his face gently. "But we do it anyway because living means taking risks. Being alive means being vulnerable. And you've been dead long enough, don't you think?" He pulled her closer, ignoring the pain, needing her warmth more than he needed healing. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Not just tonight. Stay." "I'm not going anywhere," she promised. If this story is keeping you hooked, hit that subscribe button, because what comes next will absolutely blow your mind. The healing has just begun. Over the next 2 days, Naledi stayed with Dae-jung at his penthouse. She'd called her assistant to handle the atelier, claiming a family emergency. In truth, she couldn't leave him. Not yet. Not when he needed her most. She changed his bandages twice a day, monitoring for infection. Made him proper food instead of the takeout his staff usually brought. Sang-woo had arrived the first morning, taken one look at Naledi, and switched immediately to Korean. "Hyungnim, what are you doing? What does it look like?" "It looks like you're in love. It looks like you've lost your mind." But Sang-woo's expression wasn't angry. It was worried. "The Johannesburg syndicate thinks you're weak now. And they're right. You are weak. For her." Naledi, who understood more Korean than she let on thanks to K-drama marathons, looked up from the bandages she was preparing. "I understand enough to know you're talking about me. And you're wrong. He's not weak. He's finally strong enough to let someone in." Sang-woo stared at her, then at Dae-jung, then back again. A slow smile spread across his face. "Ah. So it's like that." He switched to English. "Then you should know, Naledi SSI, that the men who hurt him will come for you too. Are you prepared for that? Are they prepared for a Zulu woman who grew up in Alexander Township?" She met his gaze steadily. "I didn't build my business by being soft. And I'm not about to start now." Sang-woo laughed, a genuine sound. "I like her, Hyungnim. Don't mess this up." After he left, Dae-jung pulled Naledi down to sit beside him. "You're learning Korean? I thought it might come in handy." She grinned. "Turns out I was right. You're full of surprises." "So are you." Her expression turned serious. "Dae-jung, we need to talk about what happens next. Your enemies know about me now. My business could be at risk. My family. I'll protect them. All of them. I swear it." "That's not what I'm asking." She took his hand. "I'm asking what you want. Not what you think you should want. Not what's strategic. What does your heart want?" He looked at her for a long moment. "You. A life. Maybe a way out of this darkness I've been living in. Then let's find it. Together." She leaned in, kissing him softly. "But first, you need to tell me everything. All of it. I can't walk into this blind." So he told her. About the Yakuza hit that had nearly killed him. About the criminal empire he'd built from nothing, starting as a street kid in Seoul and rising to control operations across 3 continents. About the violence, the money, the power that meant nothing when he was alone at night. "I'm not a good man, Naledi." "Maybe not. But you're a man who can become better. And that's what matters." She traced the scars on his abdomen, the ones from the explosion. "These don't define you. Neither does your past. What defines you is what you choose next." That evening, as the sun set over Johannesburg, Dae-jung stood with Naledi on his penthouse balcony. The sky burned orange and gold, painting the city in warm light. "There it is," Naledi said softly. Your sunrise. Or sunset, I guess. Either way, light. He wrapped his arm around her waist, still tender but healing. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. For not running. For. He struggled for words. For making me want to be whole again. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. You were always whole, Dae-jung. You just needed someone to remind you. They kissed as the sun disappeared below the horizon, and for the first time in 18 months, Dae-jung felt something he'd thought lost forever. Hope. The next weeks were a careful dance. Dae-jung increased security around Ubuntu Atelier without making it obvious. Sang-woo had men watching Naledi's apartment, her routes to work, her family's homes. The Johannesburg syndicate made no further moves, but the threat hung in the air like gathering storm clouds. Naledi continued her work, but now Dae-jung was there, often sitting in her office while she designed, content just to be in her presence. She taught him about fabrics and patterns, about the stories woven into traditional African designs. He told her about Seoul, about the places he'd loved before violence became his trade. I want to take you there, he said one evening as they lay tangled together in her bed. The physical healing had progressed faster than expected. With Naledi, his body responded with an eagerness that still amazed him. Not just desire, but connection. Wholeness. To Seoul. Show you the city. As your girlfriend? She traced patterns on his chest. Or as your dirty secret? As my everything. He caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. I want them all to see. The Ice King, thawed by the African sun. She laughed. That's terrible poetry. I'm a gangster, not a poet. You could be both. Her expression turned serious. Dae-jung, what happens when your enemies come again? Because they will. We both know it. Then I'll handle them. How? More violence? More blood? She sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. I need you to understand something. I can't live like that. Always waiting for the next attack. I won't. Then I'll get out. The words surprised him, but once spoken, he realized they were true. Sang-woo can take over operations. I've been planning it anyway. Really? Really? He pulled her back down to him. You make me want things I thought I'd given up on. A normal life. Maybe a family someday. Things that aren't compatible with running a criminal empire. That's a big change. You're a big reason. He kissed her forehead. Besides, I'm tired, Naledi. Tired of violence. Tired of always looking over my shoulder. Maybe it's time. She curled into him, and they lay in comfortable silence. Outside, Johannesburg hummed with life, oblivious to the transformations happening in this small apartment. But peace is a fragile thing, especially in the underworld. The attack came not at Naledi, but at her atelier. 3 days later, while she was at the wholesale fabric market, someone threw a Molotov cocktail through the front window of Ubuntu Atelier. The fire department responded quickly, but damage was done. Smoke and flame had destroyed 2 weeks of work, thousands of rands in fabric and supplies. Naledi stood outside, watching firefighters douse the last of the flames, and felt something cold settle in her chest. Vandao hugged her, crying. Other staff members stood in shocked silence. Dae-jung arrived within minutes, Sang-woo and 4 men behind him. He went straight to Naledi, checking her for injuries even though she hadn't been there. I'm fine, she said numbly. But my shop can be rebuilt. His voice was cold fury. This was them. The Johannesburg syndicate. They came after my business to hurt you. It wasn't a question. Yes. Something snapped in Naledi then. All the fear, all the careful restraint. She turned to Dae-jung, and her eyes were blazing. No more, she said firmly. I am done being a pawn in your war. You want to be with me? Then you end this. Tonight. I don't care how. But I will not let these people destroy what I built. Do you understand me? Dae-jung had faced down Yakuza bosses and cartel leaders without flinching. But the look in Naledi's eyes, hurt and furious and determined, nearly undid him. I'll handle it, he said quietly. You'd better. Because I meant what I said about walking this path together. But I won't walk it if you're still playing by their rules. She grabbed his shirt, pulling him close. You want out? Then get out. Make it real. Make it stick. Show them that the Ice King is dead, and Choi Dae-jung, just a man, has taken his place. Sang-woo stepped forward. Hyungnim, if you move against the Johannesburg syndicate, it could mean war. Then let it be war. Dae-jung's voice was ice. But a short one. Make the calls. I want everyone assembled at the warehouse in 2 hours. As preparations began, Naledi pulled him aside. What are you going to do? What I should have done the moment they came after you. I'm going to remind them why people call me the Ice King. One last time. And then I'm done. Dae-jung. Trust me. Please. He cupped her face. I'm not going to become the thing you fear. But I am going to protect what's mine. And you're mine, Naledi. You're mine, and I'm yours, and anyone who threatens that needs to understand what that means. The meeting with the Johannesburg syndicate happened in neutral territory, an abandoned warehouse near the dockyards. Both sides brought men, but the agreement was for leaders only to talk. Marcus Dlamini, the syndicate's head, was a large man with calculating eyes. He looked at Dae-jung with barely concealed contempt. The Ice King graces us with his presence. I thought you'd be too busy playing dress-up with your girlfriend. Dae-jung didn't react. He'd learned long ago that the most dangerous men were the quiet ones. You attacked her business. That was a mistake. Was it? Seems to me it got your attention. Marcus leaned back in his chair. See, here's the problem, Choi. You come into our city, acting like you own the place. Taking territory, making moves. And now you're distracted by some woman. Makes us nervous. I'm transitioning out of operations. My second will take over. Oh, we know. We also know that makes you vulnerable. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay us 20% of all your Johannesburg operations for the next 2 years. Call it a goodbye tax. And the woman? She stays untouched. But only if you pay. The warehouse was silent. Sang-woo tensed beside Dae-jung, hand moving subtly toward his weapon. Dae-jung stood slowly. When he spoke, his voice carried that old coldness, the one that had built his reputation across continents. Let me tell you what's actually going to happen. You will never, ever touch Naledi Khumalo again. Not her business, not anyone she cares about. You will spread the word to every organization in this city that she is protected. Permanently. Or what? Marcus laughed. You'll what, Choi? You're one man. I'm one man with connections that span from Seoul to Tokyo to Moscow to Medellin. I'm one man who spent 20 years building an empire on the bones of people who underestimated me. Dae-jung leaned forward, and his smile was terrifying. You think I'm weak because I love someone? You think love makes me less dangerous? You're wrong. It makes me more dangerous. Because now I have something worth burning your entire organization to protect. He straightened up. So here's my offer. You leave her alone, I leave you alone. I transition out peacefully. Or you refuse, and I make it my final mission to dismantle everything you've built. I'll do it legally, tips to police, evidence to prosecutors. I'll do it illegally, your suppliers, your routes, your protection. I'll do it socially, every organization you work with will know you went after a civilian, a woman, just to make a point. You'll be isolated and destroyed within 6 months. The silence was deafening. That's quite a threat, Marcus said slowly. It's not a threat. It's a promise. Dae-jung placed a folder on the table. Inside is proof of 3 major transactions you've made in the last month. Copies are already with contacts of mine. If anything happens to me, Naledi, or anyone connected to us, those documents go to authorities. You'll spend the next 20 years in prison. Marcus opened the folder, and his face paled. Insurance, Dae-jung said simply. So here's how this ends. We shake hands, you agree to leave us alone, and I disappear from Johannesburg's underworld peacefully. Everyone wins. Or you refuse, and you lose everything. Choose. Marcus looked at him for a long time. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. You've made your point, Choi. The woman is protected. But you'd better really disappear. Because if I see you making moves again, you won't. They shook. I'm done with this life. You can have it. Outside the warehouse, Sang-woo exhaled heavily. That was either brilliant or insane. Both, probably. Dae-jung pulled out his phone, calling Naledi. It's done. You're safe. Her voice was thick with relief. Come home. Please. Just come home. Home. When had her apartment become home? But he knew the answer. It had become home the moment she'd opened her door to him, bleeding and broken, and chosen to heal him instead of turning him away. 3 months later, Ubuntu Atelier reopened. The renovations had transformed it into something even more beautiful, a blend of African tradition and modern design that reflected both Naledi's vision and the changes she'd undergone. Dae-jung stood at the back during the reopening party, watching her move through the crowd. She wore a dress of her own design, vibrant blues and golds that caught the light. When she laughed, he felt it in his chest. Sang-woo appeared beside him with 2 glasses of champagne. You look happy, Hyungnim. I am. And it was true. The transition had been smooth. Sang-woo had taken over operations with Dae-jung's blessing, restructuring things to be less violent, more sustainable. Dae-jung had kept his word, he'd disappeared from the criminal world. Now he split time between helping Naledi manage the business side of her atelier and working with a non-profit that helped former gang members transition to legitimate work. It was redemption, of a sort. Not complete, never complete. But something. She's good for you, Sang-woo said. She saved me. No. Sang-woo smiled. You saved yourself. She just showed you how. Naledi caught Dae-jung's eye across the room and excused herself from the conversation she was in. She wove through the crowd until she reached him, sliding her arm around his waist. There you are. Are you hiding? Observing. There's a difference. She laughed. Come on. I want you to meet some people. As she led him into the crowd, introducing him simply as Dae-jung, my partner, he marveled at the simple normalcy of it. No titles. No reputation. Just a man at a party, supporting the woman he loved. Later that night, after the guests had left and the staff had cleaned up, they sat on the atelier floor surrounded by fabric samples. Naledi was sketching, and Dae-jung was reading through non-profit proposals. I've been thinking, Naledi said without looking up from her sketch. About Seoul. Yeah? I want to go. Not just visit, I want us to go together. To the places that made you who you are. She looked up. The good places. The ones you remember before everything got complicated. I'd like that. He set down his papers. There's someone I want you to meet. My Halmione, my grandmother. She's 92 and sharp as a knife. She'll love you. Will she approve of me? She'll approve of what you've done for me. Of what we've built together. He pulled Naledi into his lap. You know what she told me once? She said true strength isn't in never falling. It's in getting back up. And choosing to be vulnerable again even after you've been broken. Wise woman. She raised me for 10 years after my mother died. Taught me everything good I know. Everything else. He gestured vaguely. Everything else I learned on the streets. Naledi touched his face gently. You're not those streets anymore. No. I'm not. He kissed her palm. I'm yours. And I'm yours. She rested her forehead against his. We're each other's. Broken pieces that somehow make a whole. They sat like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, in the quiet of her atelier, in the life they'd built from ashes and second chances. Outside, Johannesburg hummed with life, beautiful, chaotic, dangerous, full of possibility. Just like them. 6 months later, Dae-jung stood in Namsan Tower in Seoul, Naledi beside him, watching the sunset paint the city in gold. His grandmother had indeed loved Naledi, switching between Korean and broken English to tell embarrassing stories about young Dae-jung. They'd visited his mother's grave, and Naledi had laid flowers while he cried silently. You were right, he said now, watching the sun disappear. It always comes back. What does? The light. He turned to her. My Iamoni used to say no matter how dark it gets, the sun always comes back. I thought she was wrong. I thought some darkness was permanent. And now? Now I know she was right. He pulled out a small box. I know we haven't been together that long. I know we've done things backward, living together before dating properly, surviving attacks before having normal couple problems. But I also know that every day with you is proof that broken things can heal. That frozen hearts can thaw. That men like me can find redemption. He opened the box, revealing a ring that blended Korean and African design, platinum with Zulu beadwork inlaid, a diamond that caught the last rays of sunlight. Naledi Khumalo, will you marry me? Tears streamed down her face. You know I'll say yes. I hoped. But I needed to hear it. Yes. Yes, you impossible man. Yes to all of it, the life, the healing, the future we're building. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and they kissed as the Seoul sunset faded into twilight. Around them, tourists took photos and couples walked hand in hand, oblivious to the minor miracle happening in their midst. Two broken people, finding their way to whole. Back in Johannesburg, Ubuntu Atelier thrived. Naledi had expanded into a second location, and Dae-jung's nonprofit had helped dozens of young men find legitimate work and escape the gang life. They weren't perfect, both still had nightmares, still carried scars, still had days when the past felt too heavy. But they had each other. On quiet mornings, Dae-jung would wake before Naledi, watching her sleep, still amazed that this was his life. That he got to have this. On busier days, they'd pass each other in the hall of their shared apartment, exchanging quick kisses and promises to talk later. And on the hardest days, when old wounds ached and memories threatened to overwhelm, they'd sit together in silence, holding hands, reminding each other that healing isn't linear. That wholeness isn't about erasing the past. It's about carrying it forward while choosing to live anyway. 1 year after their engagement, they married in a ceremony that blended Korean and Zulu traditions. Sang-woo stood as best man, making a speech that had everyone laughing and crying. Naledi's grandmother, wearing traditional beadwork, blessed them in Zulu. Dae-jung's Halmiani, via video call from Seoul, offered her own blessing in Korean. The wedding dress Naledi designed herself, white silk with subtle Korean patterns and traditional Zulu beadwork, a physical representation of their merged worlds. Dae-jung wore a suit she'd designed for him, the one with African print lining hidden inside, visible only when he moved. Secret power for a man who'd learned that true strength comes from vulnerability. As they danced at the reception, Naledi whispered, "No regrets?" "Not one," Dae-jung answered. "You?" "Only that we didn't find each other sooner. We found each other exactly when we needed to. Not before, when I was still frozen. Not later, when you might have given up on complicated men." He spun her gently. "Exactly when we were both ready. Look at you, being poetic. I'm a husband now. It's expected." She laughed, that sound he'd fallen in love with in her atelier, and he held her closer, grateful for every moment that had led them here. The explosion that nearly killed him. The 18 months of darkness. The chance decision to walk into a fabric shop in Sandton. All of it necessary. All of it bringing him to this moment, this woman, this life. If you've made it this far in their story, you're part of something special. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what moment hit you hardest, because stories like this deserve to be shared. And trust me, you'll want to be here for what we have coming next. Like this video if you believe in second chances and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Years later, when people would ask how they met, Naledi and Dae-jung would exchange a look, a smile passing between them. In a shop, Naledi would say, "She was working. I walked in," Dae-jung would add. "And he never really left," Naledi would finish, squeezing his hand. The truth was more complicated, darker, more beautiful than those simple words could convey. But some stories are too precious to share fully with strangers. Some transformations too intimate to explain to people who haven't known darkness. They knew, though. They remembered every moment, the fear, the pain, the impossible hope that somehow, against all odds, they could be whole together. And they were. Not perfect. Not without scars. But whole. In the mornings, Dae-jung still traced the surgical scars on his abdomen, reminders of the explosion that had nearly destroyed him. But now, Naledi's hand would find his, and she'd kiss each scar, each mark, each reminder of survival. "You're beautiful," she'd say. "I'm scarred." Same thing. Scars mean you survived. That you healed. That you're here. And he'd pull her close, breathing in the scent of shea butter and fabric softener, feeling his body respond with the eagerness that still amazed him. Proof that wholeness wasn't about being undamaged. It was about being alive. Ubuntu, Naledi had taught him. The Zulu philosophy that meant I am because we are. Wholeness through connection. Humanity through relationships. One person healing another by simply seeing them, truly seeing them, and choosing to stay. He'd been broken. She'd been alone. Together, they'd found something neither could have discovered separately. Wholeness. Not despite the brokenness, but because of it. Because sometimes the cracks are where the light gets in. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the light comes in the form of a woman standing in a fabric shop, greeting a stranger with warmth instead of fear, seeing possibility instead of danger, offering healing instead of judgment. "Sabobona," she'd said. "I see you." And he'd been seen. Truly seen. For the first time in years, maybe for the first time ever. And in being seen, he'd found his way back to himself. Back to life. Back to wholeness. The end.